Well, good morning, everybody. It's Sunday, the 27th of April, 2025. And I'm just taking a ride around. The beeping sound you can hear is the tyre pressure monitor telling me that the tyres apparently have low pressure, but that's not the case. It's because the tyres are cold. The monitor thinks the pressure is low. So I'm just riding around town with no particular purpose and no particular place in mind, but I'm going to talk about electric vehicles. And so I'd say here at the beginning, if you're not interested in hearing any more of my thoughts about electric vehicles, and I must admit I've said lots of them, giving you lots of them, then by all means turn the volume down and just enjoy the scenery. If you have a comment about anything I'm going to say in this video, then leave it in the appropriate place, and when I become aware of it, I will respond. I should say at the beginning, I don't own an electric vehicle. I have no interest in any company that makes, imports or sells electric vehicles. I'm not trying to sell you one. I'm not endorsing a particular brand or model. I'm just talking generally about what I understand is the situation with EVs at the moment. I should also say, since this broadcast or this video will have some political commentary, that I don't belong to any lobby group or political party. I'm not trying to influence your vote one way or the other. I'm not saying you should vote for somebody or not vote for somebody. I'm simply talking about electric vehicles as I understand the situation at the moment uh, and trying to explain uh, some events that have happened in the last week or so. So all of that said, let's get to it. The current Australian government, which is a Labor government, uh, headed by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, in about 2023 introduced a plan that said if you bought a fully electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid vehicle and you bought it on a novated lease using salary sacrificing and the value of the vehicle was 91,000 and change or a little bit less, then the government would be prepared to forego the fringe benefits tax. Now, I should also say I'm not a tax lawyer or an accountant and I don't have all the intricacies of fringe benefits tax, but the government said it would be prepared to forego the fringe benefits tax if you did those things. Now, there were some obviously certain conditions. One is you had to buy a vehicle that was worth 91,000 and change or less. The second was it had to be a fully electric or plug-in hybrid vehicle. And the third was that you had to buy it using uh, a novated lease and salary sacrifice. So a few conditions. So if you did all those things, the government said they would forego the fringe benefits tax. Now, according to some people who do know about these things and know more than I do, uh, the potential value of that saving could have been as much as $5,000. That would depend, first of all, on the vehicle you bought, your income, how long you kept the vehicle for, uh, and generally vehicles on novated leases are kept for 4 or 5 years before being turned over, sometimes 3 years, but I think 4 or 5 is about the average. So there are again certain conditions on the saving that you made. But the government said if you do all these things, then we're prepared to do this for you. Or we're prepared to forego some revenue. So for the greater good of what they saw as a greater good of selling electric or getting people to buy electric vehicles. Now, I've always said from almost the beginning of when I started talking about electric vehicles, and that's probably 5 or 6 years ago, that the two benefits of electric vehicles to Australia were one, it would reduce our dependence on foreign oil. Now, wherever our oil comes from at the moment, it's all imported. So at any given time, there could be some sort of natural disaster. For example, a ship being caught in the Suez Canal, and that has happened, that might interrupt the supply line between where the oil is and us that need it. Or, worse still, there could be an outbreak of some hostilities somewhere along the way between where our oil comes from and getting to Australia. And either of those things could interrupt the supply of oil to Australia. I've said before that the best of our planners, they plan for the worst and hope for the best. At any given time there could be interruptions to the supply lines for our oil. So anything we can do to reduce our dependence on foreign oil is, in my view, a good thing. The second thing that electric vehicles will do is that they will, over time, and it's going to be a long period of time because it's taken us a long time to get into the mess that we're in, but over time they will reduce the emissions because quite simply when you start up your electric vehicle and drive it around, there are no emissions. Never mind how it's made, we're just talking about driving the car for that. I'm not trying to dismiss those issues about how it's made and what emissions might be created there, but when you're driving the car, there are no emissions. And given that most people in Australia live in highly densely populated large urban areas along the east coast, anything that results in cleaner air in those densely populated centres would be a good thing. Whether you believe in net zero or the whole carbon business and climate change and all that sort of stuff is one thing, but I can almost be certain in saying, given that I'm not a doctor, that any doctor would tell you that anything that results in cleaner air is going to result in better health for people, especially those who have respiratory problems like asthma or emphysema or other breathing issues. And so purely on those grounds, more electric vehicles being driven means that there will be, over time, cleaner air. Now, you might say, well, there are some issues here, such as when we consider that electric vehicles only make up 10% of all new car sales, why should the other 90% of people who buy combustion vehicles subsidise the 10%? And that's a valid question. There is also the question of saying that those people who buy electric vehicles, they're avoiding fuel tax, and therefore they're not contributing to the maintenance of roads, despite the fact that their vehicles in many cases are heavier and therefore potentially inflict more damage on the roads than combustion engine vehicles. Both of those things are true, but nevertheless this policy is in existence at the moment, and the government had always planned and had said so from the beginning that as of 31st of March 2025, the benefits for buying a plug-in hybrid would cease. After that, the benefits will only accrue for those who bought fully electric battery operated vehicles. When they came up with the modelling, they said they expected something like 10,000 people to take advantage of this offer, and that would result in approximately $50 million in foregone revenue. Now it turns out that they were wrong, and wrong by a factor of 10, in that the number of people who've taken up this offer is 100,000 people. And I suspect that most of those 100,000 people have bought a plug-in hybrid because they get the benefits of the scheme that the government's offering, but they don't have the issues of worrying about if their battery's going to be run flat, they're going to be left stranded somewhere, as obviously the petrol engine kicks in and the battery gets low and so forth. Now it turns out they were wrong by a factor of about 10. That is, 100,000 people have taken up this offer, and the foregone revenue is not $50 million, but $500 million. Nevertheless, the government said if we are re-elected, we plan to continue this scheme. We think it's a good scheme, we think it's doing what we want it to do, which is getting people to drive electric vehicles, and we want them to do that because we want to reduce emissions, we want clean air in our cities and so forth, and we think this thing is working, so if we're re-elected, we plan to continue the program. When the legislation to enable the program was introduced to the Parliament, the opposition voted against it. That's their right. They're an opposition. They're entitled to oppose government policies, especially ones that they don't agree with and they don't think are any good. And so they voted against it. Now we're in the middle of an election campaign. The election will be held, or the voting for that election will be held next Sunday the 3rd of May. And it may well be that after that date, all of what I'm saying is irrelevant, because we'll either have the same government or we'll have a new government. And either the current policy will exist or there'll be a different policy. However, in the middle of the election campaign last week, the alternate Prime Minister, the leader of the Liberal Party, Peter Dutton, was asked whether he had any plans to change the existing arrangements regarding electric vehicles and subsidies, and he said an unequivocal no, there were no plans to change it. In the same week, A day or two later, I think, the Liberal Party released a document showing how they intended to achieve the savings that they've been talking about, and how they intended to fund some of their programs. And amongst those savings was the cancellation of the current arrangements for electric vehicles. In other words, they were cancelling the program that the current government had, and they were cancelling the program that Peter Dutton had said he had no plans to change. When he was asked about that document, he said no, that wasn't the policy. No, there was going to be no change to the existing arrangements. And then on the third occasion he was asked about it, he said, well, yes, there is going to be a change. We are going to scrap that program. And so it appears that there has been a change of policy. Now, I have some concerns and issues with that. The first of which is it seems a bit odd that the alternate government that is asking you to vote for them, and remember, I'm not asking you to vote for anybody, and I've already cast my vote, that doesn't seem to know its own policy, doesn't seem to know what it's going to do, and changes its mind in the space of three times in the space of a couple of days. It seems to me that's not a good basis for electing a government. That maybe isn't an issue that concerns you a lot. The second issue is this. If 100,000 people took advantage of this offer during the 18 months or so that it was in existence, let's assume, just for the sake of argument, that only 50,000 people take advantage of it in the next period that it's on offer. So now we've got 50,000 people, let's say, for the sake of argument, and if you think I'm being overly generous, then you're welcome to say so in the comments. But let's say we've got 50,000 people who are now thinking, I think I'll buy a new car. You know, the old one's got 300,000 Ks on it, looking a bit tired, and I'm a bit over it, and I'd love to have a new car, and all of those reasons that can motivate you to buy a new car. And then you're thinking, well, will I buy petrol, or will I buy combustion, or will I buy electric? Maybe I'll buy electric this year. Then if somebody at the company you work, people you work for say, oh, by the way, you do know that our company does salary sacrificing. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means if you buy an electric vehicle, you are free of fringe benefits. You might save $5,000. You're thinking, well, maybe I will buy an electric vehicle. I hadn't thought about it, but maybe I will buy an electric vehicle. But then you hear, well, that's the policy now, but it could change if there's a change of government. So you're thinking, well, I better not order this vehicle just in case there is a change of policy and I end up with a vehicle I don't want, or I end up paying more for the vehicle than I had budgeted for. 50,000 people doing that is a lot of people who are indecisive, a lot of people who are now putting their wallets back in their back pocket saying, well, I'm not going to spend that money for the moment. And surely that's not a good thing. If there are people indecisive who are now not spending money they should be spending, or they were thinking about spending, that's probably not a good thing. But imagine an even a different scenario, another scenario. Imagine you are a manufacturer of electric vehicles, be it a Chinese manufacturer or some other, whether they're made in China or Thailand or Korea or whatever. You're a company that makes electric vehicles. And you look at your sales figures for Australia and you say, well, we did pretty well in Australia last year. Let's ship a few more vehicles out to Australia. And that plan that the government has might help us sell a few more this year. So you put those vehicles on the boat and they're sailing to Australia. I don't know how long it takes to sail from Korea, China or Thailand to Australia. But the boat's on its way, and then you hear, oh no, there could be a change of plan. If there's a new government, there'll be a change of plan, and that plan's cancelled, and we might not sell as many vehicles. Well, you're certainly not going to tell the boat to turn around and bring it back again. You're certainly not going to say, well, we just won't worry about them, we just won't sell those vehicles. They're going to be landed in Australia. They're right-hand drive vehicles, so they can't be sold in lots of other markets. They can be sold in some other markets, but not every other market. And you certainly don't want to have to pay the freight to send them back to the factory or to the other market where they can be sold. So you say, well, unfortunately, we sell those in Australia now, we'll have to discount them. And that means everyone who bought one of the old money is now disadvantaged because they bought one of the old money. Now their vehicle is going to be worth less because you've discounted the new ones. So the second-hand ones are discounted by the same amount. Well, supposing you're an importer and you're saying, well, last year we imported X number of these vehicles, electric vehicles, and they sold really well in Australia. And this government plan is, as far as we know, still in existence, so let's order some more. Let's ask the factory for some more. So the factory says, all right, and ships you off some more cars. But then you realise there's a change of plan. That plan might not be the case in 6 months, or a week, or 2 weeks, or whatever. So we better hold off. Oh, sorry, the cars are already on the boat, mate. You've got to take them. We don't want them. Well, too bad. You got them now. Or, third scenario, dealers are saying, we sold pretty well last year with those electric vehicles. Why don't you give us some more? So the factory says, all right, sends them out to you. They land at your holding yard, and you then find out, well, the government's changed its mind, or there's a new government coming in and they've changed their mind. They're saying, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to scrap that plan. I acknowledge, first of all, that incoming governments have the right to say, well, that plan that the previous government had, that policy the previous government had, we don't agree with it because they need certainty that whatever the rules are, they need to know that they're going to be the rules for a few years' time. Not, well, they're going to chop and change whenever there's a change in government. And the fellow who's asking me to vote for him as the alternate Prime Minister says, oh, this is the policy. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Um, the argument that the less well off are subsidising the rich who are the only people who can afford electric vehicles is a little bit thin these days because there are a range of electric vehicles available in Australia that start from about $40,000 drive away. Now, whether you want one or not is another matter, but there are a range of vehicles available in the Australian market now between about $40,000 and $60,000. 20,000 is a large price bracket, I understand that, but nevertheless, there are a range of vehicles in that price bracket. My understanding is that the median price spent on a new vehicle in Australia is $50,000, and that 58% of the vehicles we sell in Australia are large SUVs, dual cab utes. Large SUVs start at around 60,000 and go all the way to 100,000 or more, and the dual cab utes, dual cab utes, they start at somewhere around 60,000, top out at 80 or 90,000, depending on which one you buy and what spec you buy and so on. For example, the Kia Tasman, that's the one being talked about a lot now because it's just been launched, it's on the market at about $75,000. So there are lots of electric vehicles that are in what would be considered the affordable vehicle range. Whether you want them or not is another matter, but they are in the affordable range. So I don't think it's an argument that can be put all that well now that only the rich can afford them and the poor are subsidising the rich. The poor might not want an electric vehicle. The rich might want one and might be able to afford one. But I feel that electric vehicles are becoming more affordable. And I'm not advocating that you buy one, or as I said, I'm not spruiking a brand or a model or anything like that. I'm just trying to explain the situation as I understand it. Well, thank you for watching. If you have any comments, please leave them in the appropriate place. If I have misrepresented the situation, I welcome anyone who has clarity on what I've said to add their comments and explain to me in more detail and make it clearer what it is that is the situation. And when I become aware of your comments, I'll respond to them. I look forward to talking to you again when I'm making the next motorcycling video. I'm not sure when that'll be, but hopefully not too long. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your day, whatever you're doing, and I'll talk to you again shortly.